Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly meditation challenge, where we're going through the mind training slogans of Atisha, the Buddhist teacher. Here, we're getting to the point where some of these slogans are associated with what's known as prajna. Pra could be translated as superior or super, and then jna would be knowing, so it's sort of the superior knowledge. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche once called prajna the sword that cuts the bondage of ego. What does that mean? It means that when we are actually meditating, we're present with something. We don't always view the world through just me and what I need to be happy and what my fixed opinions are. We're able to drop some of that and just be present with things as they are. Not seeing everything through the egoic lens of whether something's for us, against us, could be ignored by us. Just we're there. We're there fully and openly. This particular slogan, the 24th in the series, is very much directly related to that. It's translated as always abide by the three basic principles. So here Atisha lays out three principles for us to just sort of show up more fully in the world. And the first of these principles is known as honoring your commitments. For many of us, we have a daily commitment to meditation practice. We have a commitment to working with our own mind and our own heart so that we are more able to take care of ourselves and others. So when we take a commitment to actually train our minds, what we're doing is that we're saying we're not going to back down. We actually stick with it. When we find that our schedule is too busy, when we find that we are feeling lazy or disheartened about the practice, that doesn't mean we back away and just forget about it. We actually dust ourselves off, get back out there, and continue to train our mind and open our heart. And these are vows directly related to what's known as the refuge and bodhisattva vows. So the first part, we're talking about how we train the mind, how we actually connect with the teachings of the Buddha, how we actually practice, the community that will support us along the way, and then the training in the bodhisattva, open or awake being, the fact that we would actually go out into the world and try to be of benefit to others. So that's what we're talking about in terms of honoring the commitments as taught by Atisha. The second of these three principles is refraining from outrageous actions. When we refrain from outrageous actions, it's sort of an interesting term, right? What we're saying here is that we don't need to be so self-obsessed, that not everything has to be about me, me, me. And then we make it into a very big thing. So my political view, my agenda, my whatever it might be, and then we just throw it out there. We actually can be more steady, more modest. We could actually act in ways that we think is helpful, not get lost in what we think might be helpful. We're just there enough to actually see it and act. Now, there's a story that I like to tell in this regard. Many years ago, I was living at a Buddhist center, and there is a long retreat going on, and there was a person who was in charge of the kitchen, and there's a person who was in charge of the garden. And they did not get along whatsoever. But then it really came to head at one point. They were cooking for hundreds of people at once. It was a very small kitchen, very small garden. The head gardener walks into the kitchen one day, puts down a giant box of tomatoes, and apparently he put it right in the middle of someone's cooking station. Now, I'm not a chef, but I hear that that's like a huge no-no. It's actually a sign of disrespect that he would just plop it down anywhere. And the chef saw that and grabbed the box, and the head gardener's walking through the yard. The head of the kitchen comes out with the box of tomatoes and throws it off the deck. And tomatoes go everywhere. In that moment, the gardener turns around, meets eyes with the head of the kitchen. They just stare at each other for what feels like an eternity. And I remember it very clearly, just the anger that was there. And then the head of the garden turns around and storms off. The head of the kitchen turns around, slams the door behind him. And in that moment, everyone had an idea. Oh my God, we need to do something about it. We need to put them in mediation. We need to fire that chef. We need to, whatever it was. And it was all sent through their particular lens of outrageous things that they personally think had to happen. It was their view. And in that moment, there was one of the retreatants, a young woman who was in her teens, 16, 17 years old. And as people were freaking out, she went over and she did something really amazing. She took the box and she put it right side up, and then went around and started putting the tomatoes one by one back in the box. When she was done, she put the box aside on the porch and waited until everyone calmed down so that they could deal with the situation. And I have to say that was the most skillful thing I had ever seen. It's so simple. It was what needed to happen. The tomatoes just had to be picked up. So this is that sense of steadiness, modesty, but just showing up and saying, oh, I see what needs to be done. I don't have to be outrageous in every situation. I can just show up and see a situation clearly and act. And the third of these basic principles is developing patience. So honoring your commitments, refraining from outrageous actions, and developing patience. Because mind training is not just something that we zoom through, that we just pick up and then it's always something then back of our mind. It's actually a lifelong occupation. We're always training our mind. We can train our mind in different ways for years and years and years and still have work to do. So we have to be extremely patient with ourselves and not give up on our practice. When we honor these three basic principles, we, as Trala Rinpoche says in the reading associated with this week, we, quote, do something beneficial, meaningful, and purposeful with our lives, unquote. And I think that's something that we all want to do. So we honor the commitment to practice, we refrain from just lashing out in outrageous ways, and we take the long view of patience with ourselves and with others. So in this particular week, the challenge is when you notice that you are about to break one of these principles, reflect on these three things. Even in the morning, you could just take a moment to reflect on the commitments to your practice, the ways that you might at times have a habitual way of lashing out, the ways that you could develop patience and try to live in accord with it. But when you are confronted with opportunities to be outrageous and make everything about you, just reflect on the commitments in that moment. See if that changes your behavior in any way. Okay, looking forward to hearing how it goes. Take good care.